Hello, welcome to your fourth Roblox lesson, and in this lesson we're just going to learn about explosions and messages. Okay, so to start off with, I've just made a simple base plate, and I've got a spawn point set at position 0, 1, 1, which, by the way, last lesson I told you to go 0, 0, 1. It turns out that just switched itself to 0, 1, 1, which is what I meant. And then we have this brick over here, and you can just place that wherever. I've just put mine over here. And inside the brick, I've inserted a script. So pretty much what we had last time. However, the script is a bit more complicated, so let's just go into it. Okay, I'll walk you through it. First of all, we have a global variable, so it's not in the untouched function or anything, it's just a variable which is out there, called touched. And this is used to basically control the brick, because if we didn't have all this stuff about touched in the code, what would happen is when you touch the brick, you would touch it multiple times, resulting in multiple messages to grey up your screen, and then multiple explosions, and it all gets very unstable. So this touched variable is to control that. So touch starts off as false, because we want the user to be able to touch the brick and it to explode. Now we have our brick set to set to script.parent, so that's just the brick. And when the brick is touched, we call this onTouch function. Now, in the onTouch function is pretty much where all this new code happens. So first thing, we have our local toucher, which is the person that touched the brick. And again, we just find this as we did in the previous lesson. Then, if toucher does not equal nothing, so if we definitely have a toucher, then we go on into the next if statement. So these are nested if statements. Now, the next if statement is simply if touched is false. So if they haven't touched the brick recently, so if touched is false, as it starts off as, then first of all set touch to true, so they can't set off another explosion until right at the end of here where we set touch to false. Then make a local variable called message and set it to Instance.new message. And all this does is make a new message. Instance.new is basically just for making new things. You can say Instance.new part, message, explosion. There are loads of different Instance.new things you can do. So we then make this message and we go message.parent is workspace. So the message is inside workspace. And then the message text is get ready for an explosion. So that means it'll come on their screens, get ready for an explosion. Or your screens as it might be. And then we're going to wait 5 seconds. We're going to remove the message and we're going to have basically our explosion. So we have a local variable called explosion. And we set this to Instance.new explosion, so this makes a new explosion. Then explosion, so this is a variable explosion, dot parent is workspace. So the explosion is inside the workspace. And what that's going to do is that's just going to trigger our explosion. And then we're going to say touched false, so the brick hasn't been touched recently, so now if people touch the brick they can trigger the explosion again. And then we end this if touched equals false if statement, we end this if toucher is not equal nil statement, and we end the onTouch function. So it's quite simple. Well, it's not quite simple, but basically what it does is it displays a message, takes away the message after 5 seconds, and explodes. And you can set it off as many times as you like, but you can't set it off multiple times at the same time. Also, please note that with the message and with the explosion, instead of just setting .parent and .text with the message, there are other things you can customize with that, which I may be going over in another lesson. So that's the script. I'll just show you what it does. So tools, test, play solo. Okay, so here's our Roblox guy. Just wait for this annoying coloured outline to turn off because I don't like it. Okay, so let's touch the brick. Get ready for an explosion. And boom, there's the explosion. Let's just do it again. Get ready for an explosion. And boom. Please note the explosion will also kill you, so if I just get in the middle of it here. Boom. Character's dead. Also, sometimes what can happen is occasionally your body parts will hit the brick, causing another touch, causing another explosion. So it just depends how lucky you are when you die. In that case, I was pretty lucky. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson. It's pretty much a simple outcome, but the script can get quite complicated if you don't know about nesting of statements and that kind of thing. Really, all it does is, if the brick hasn't been touched recently, you're allowed to touch the brick. If you touch the brick, and again it hasn't been touched recently, it'll set off the messaging explosion, and then you're allowed to touch it again. The rest is just pretty simple, and we've used it in other lessons. So that's the end of this lesson. Have fun with this, and play around with it. Have a nice day.